Today I'm going to be talking about the first few verses of Upadēśa Undiyār. Before I do so, I'll discuss the introductory verses written by Muruganar and explain the context in which Bhagavan wrote this work, because particularly to understand the earlier verses, it's necessary to understand the context. The work begins with a pāyiram. Pāyiram means introductory or prefatory verse. This is composed by Muruganar. In this pāyiram, he says, kaṉmaṅ tindu gati kāna nere muriyin mammam ulhuwiya varanga ensommuraga ku Ende Ramanan Tahutu Indan Upadēśa Undiyār Jnana Vilako. What this means is, know that Upadēśa Undiyār is a light of jnana that our father Ramana composed and gave to Muruganar, who said, for the world to be saved, giving up the delusion of karma, tell the secret of the nature of the path to experience liberation. This verse was, as I say, it was composed by Muruganar, and he's explaining here the reason why Bhagavan wrote this work. That is, as he says, Upadēśa Undiyār, it's a light of jnana, that's a light of true knowledge or pure awareness. A light here means that it is a guide for us. It guides us towards on the path of true knowledge. And it was composed and given by Ende Ramanan. He refers to Bhagavan as, that's our father Ramana. And he gave it to Muruganar, who said, that is what Muruganar said, or what he prayed to Bhagavan is, literally the meaning is, for the world to be saved, giving up the delusion of karma, tell the secret of the nature of the path to experience liberation. I'll explain that a little bit more fully. For the world to be saved obviously means for the people of the world to be saved. And he qualifies to be saved, giving up the delusion of karma. So we can simplify it by saying, for the people of the world to give up the delusion of karma and thereby be saved. Saved means saved from self-ignorance. Tell us or reveal to us the secret of the murray. Murray means the nature or the orderly process of the path or the way or means to experience liberation. So this is the aim of Upadēśa Undiyār, to reveal to us the nature of the path by which we can experience liberation. This verse Muruganar wrote separately for Upadēśa Undiyār. It is followed by the upōdghātam. Upōdghātam again means introductory verses, but it's a different type of introductory verses. These 6 introductory verses are verses that Bhagavan selected from the work Tiruvundiyār, in which Muruganar was telling a number of Puranic stories, and in the context of which Bhagavan wrote Upadēśa Undiyār. That is, Muruganar was composed thousands of verses and songs on Bhagavan. One of his major works is a work called Sri Ramana Center, which Bhagavan himself compared to Tiruvāsakam of Manikavachika, one of the great devotional works of Tamil literature. Because Muruganar, many of the verses in Ramana Center are written on in the same style and on similar themes to some of the songs in Tiruvāsakam. In Tiruvāsakam, Muruganar sang a song, Tiruvundiyār, in which he narrated various Puranic stories about Lord Shiva. according to Murugan, Bhagavan himself is Shiva. Not only is he Shiva, he's all gods. So Murugan actually wrote 2 Tiruvundiyars. The first one is about tells the stories of various gods, say, as narrated in the Hindu Puranas, saying that all the leelas of those gods, the divine play of those gods, they were all done by Bhagavan. That is, Bhagavan who appeared in the form of all those gods. That's Tiruvundiyar 1. And then in Tiruvundiyar 2, he writes about Jesus and Buddha. He says it was Jesus who died on the cross it was Bhagavan who died on the cross in the form of Jesus to remove the sins of the world. And it was Bhagavan in the form of Buddha who taught the Buddha Dharma. So for Murugan, all gods are just various forms of Bhagavan. For him, Bhagavan is the one and only reality who has appeared in so many forms to suit the needs of different people at different times. So, as I say, in Tiruvundiyar, he told the stories not only of Shiva, but of various other Hindu gods. And when he came to, and the final story he told was the story of Dvarakavana rishis. Dvarakavana means a forest called Dvaraka. And rishi is generally taken to be wise person, but it's a term that's used in different sense, in different contexts. As this story illustrates, these particular rishis were not very wise. They were, the story as told in the Puranas is that they were a group of ascetics living in the Dvaraka forest with their wives, and they were masters of all the Vedic sacrificial rites, that is the yagas and yajnas and so on. And they had become so adept at these, they had acquired great power, but they were thereby greatly deluded. So to save them, Lord Shiva came to vanquish their pride and to teach them the path to liberation. So, as I say, this upōdghātam is Bhagavan is just 6 verses. That's the first 2 verses and the last 4 verses from the series of verses in which Murugan is telling this story. So I'll, in the first verse of the upōdghātam, he says, Daruvanatil tabum se dirandava, purva karmatal undīpaṛa, pokare poina undīpaṛa. The word undīpaṛa, which comes at the end of the 2nd and 3rd line of every verse, both in the upōdghātam and in the main text, basically it means jump and fly. It's believed that it's an ancient game played by children, and this songs in this style were composed to be sung while playing that game. But what exactly the game is now not known, because only very few songs of this type have remained. And the principal one is have remained from ancient times. The principal one being the Tiruvundiyar in Tiruvachakam. So Undīpaṛa has no special meaning in this context, but it does lend a joyful spirit to these verses. Though the verses are very deep in spiritual meaning, they're sung in a playful and joyful manner. So if we take the verse and split it up into individual words, the verse is Daruvanatil tabum se dirandava, purva karmatal pokare pāyiṇa. What that means is those who were doing austerities in the Dharaka forest were going to ruin by purva karma. If we expand the meaning slightly, those who are doing tabam, the Tamil word tabam is from the Sanskrit word tapas, it means austerities. Those who were doing tapas in the Dharaka forest were going to ruin by purva karma, he says. That implies by following purva karma, which means the path of ritualistic action as interpreted and prescribed by purva mimamsa. The word he uses here for ruin, pokare pāyiṇa, pokare means ruin. This is not a word found, you can't find this word in any dictionary. So I mean, I know because I learned from Sadhguru, it means ruin, but it means loss or ruin. But exactly how it means that, I never asked him, but I think it's composed of two words, poku and are. Poku means loss or ruin, and are means an abode or place. So they were going to the place of ruin. It could, or perhaps it could mean po kare. Po in this context would be an expletive, it would have no special meaning, and kare means a stain, blemish, dirt, defect, darkness, poison, or defilement. So I'm not sure exactly in which sense Murugan used it, but I mean, I know it meant ruin, but exactly how he formed the word, I'm not sure, but I think it's probably poku are, the place of ruin. The term, he also used the term purva karma, which some people take simply at its face value to mean former karmas, means because of their former karmas, but that's not the sense in which he used it here. What purva here is referring to the purva mimamsa. The purva mimamsa is one of the 6 principal systems of orthodox Indian philosophy. Orthodox means the astika. Astika means the systems of philosophy but accepted the authority of the Vedas, as opposed to the Nastika systems of philosophy like various schools of Buddhism, Jainism, and Charvaka, which didn't accept the authority of the Vedas. For Purva Mimamsa, it was a system of philosophy, as I say. It was focused on the interpretation of the Vedas, and it it interpreted the Vedas in a particular way, emphasizing the karma kanda, which is the earlier portion of the Vedas, that teach the path of ritualistic action. And Purva Mimamsa, because it was focused on these ritualistic actions as taught in the older portions of the Vedas, that's why it's called Purva, dealing with the earlier portion of the Vedas. Mimamsa means an analysis or interpretation. So it's the interpretation of the earlier portion of the Vedas. And Purva Mimamsa elevate action or karma to a level of such paramount importance that, as explained in the next verse, it even goes so far as to deny that there is any God except karma. And this doctrine of Purva Mimamsa, that there is no God except karma, is emphatically repudiated by Bhagavan in the first verse of Upadēśa Undiyār. Normally, Bhagavan doesn't repudiate other philosophies. Other people want to believe whatever. Bhagavan doesn't, seldom points out the shortcomings of other philosophies, because he knows different philosophies are suited to different people at different levels of spiritual maturity. But in this context, Bhagavan very emphatically repudiated this central fallacy of Purva Mimamsa. But karmas are of such paramount importance that there isn't any God except karma. Karma is supreme, is their belief. So as I say, this belief is referred to by Murugan in the next verse, in which he says, karttaṇadu kaḍavuḷō ennum vanmata rayana undīpaṛa vanja serukinal undīpaṛa. What that means is, kaṉmaṅ means karma. Karttaṇadu kaḍavuḻō. There is no God except karma. Ennum valmata ayena vanja serukinal. What that means, vanja serukinal means by or because of delusive conceit. Seruku means pride, conceit, arrogance. Vanja means lying, cheating. And in this context, we can take it, because it's used here as an adjective, we can take it as delusive, deceptive. Because of their delusive conceit, bal mata, ayin, that is, they became, mata means, it means both intoxicated and it also means madness. And it can also mean pride. So I've taken it here to mean, and bal means strong or intense. So I take this to mean they became intoxicated with intense pride. What was their pride? Karttaṇadu kaḍavuḻō. There is no God except karma. So the whole verse means, because of this delusive conceit, they became intoxicated with intense pride that there's no God except karma. And if that's the bare meaning, if we expand it slightly to bring out the sense, because of their delusive conceit or infatuation, they became so intoxicated or mad with intense pride that they fell prey to the arrogant belief that there's no God except karma. So these first two verses of the upōdghātam are verses 70 and 71 of the first part of Undiyār. That is, the first 69 verses of this first part of Undiyār. Murugan is narrating other stories from the Puranas, saying that it's Bhagavan who appears as God in each of these stories, various forms of God. But from 70 onwards, he's dealing with this particular story. So from these two verses I've just read, verses 70 and 71, and as I say, Bhagavan selected these as an introduction. The verses that Bhagavan omitted when he selected were verses 72 to 98, because generally this story is well known, so Bhagavan didn't include all the verses, he just took the first two and the last four. So what the story, as narrated by Murugan in verses 72 to 98, is as follows. In order to vanquish the pride of these deluded ascetics and thereby lead them to the path of liberation, Bhagavan, who is Lord Shiva, took the form of a mendicant and entered the Dwaraka forest accompanied by Lord Vishnu, who had taken the form of Mohini, a beautiful enchantress. As soon as they saw Mohini, the egotistic ascetics were overwhelmed with lust and began to follow her. Murugan describes them in the verse where he mentioned it. He describes them as ahankara yogiya, as if they're ahankara yogas, people who are united with ego. That is their yoga was the yoga of ego. So these ahankara yogis, as soon as they saw Mohini, they were overwhelmed with lust and they began to follow her. Meanwhile, their wives, who having lived long in the company of their husbands, had likewise become deluded with conceit, believing that no other wives in all the seven worlds venerated their husbands as much as they did. When they saw Lord Shiva, wandering as a youthful, in some stories it said he was naked, mendicant. Then they saw him. They too began to follow him, forgetting their honor and pride. But when the ascetics, when the rishis, when they saw the downfall of they saw what their wives had been overcome with attraction to this naked ascetic, and so they saw they saw the wrong their wives had done, but they were blind to their own wrongs. So and so they were filled with rage, and they wanted to punish this this ascetic who had led their wives astray. So they lit a sacrificial fire, from which they produced weapons such as a tiger, snakes, and a horde of demons. There's so many weapons they are mentioned there. But each of these weapons, as they unleashed the weapons upon the mendicant, he effortlessly took possession of them. The first one was a tiger. So he simply killed the tiger, removed its skin, and wore it as a cloth around his waist. And all the other weapons they released on him, the serpents he wrapped around his neck as a necklace. So he was able to, and the horde of demons, he took charge of them and made them his army. So whatever powerful weapons they released upon him, he was able to easily take possession of them. And so none of their powerful weapons were of any effect against him. So finally, seeing that all their powerful karmas were powerless before him, they realized that mendicant was God. And then they come the final 4 verses of the upōdghātam, which is followed by that's verses 92 to 102. And then after which comes verse 103 to 132, which are the 30 verses of Upadēśa Undiyār, the main text of Upadēśa Undiyār, followed by another 5 verses, verses 33 to 137, they're concluding verses of praise. So what he says in the next 4 verses, the final 4 verses of Bhagavan selected as the upōdghātam, they means here the ascetics, they saw the, I'll read the verse. Kaṉmam payaṉṭṛaral karttaṉa paridusai karma payaṉ kanda lundīpaṛa garvam āṇaiyāl undīpaṛa. What that means, if we split it up into words, karma payaṉ karttaṉ parisai kaṇmam payaṉ kanda. That means they saw the fruit of actions done, disparaging God, who gives the fruit of actions. Garvam āṇaiyāl, they left arrogance, they lost their pride, they left their pride. What this means, if we expand it slightly, is they saw the fruit of actions done disparaging, spurning, or disregarding God, the karta or ordainer, who gives the karma pala, the fruit of actions. And hence they left or gave up or lost garva. Garva means their pride or arrogance. And in the next verse he says, taral indru kareya karne kan taral seidan nan undīpaṛa shivan upadesham id undīpaṛa. That means karttaṇadu means literally it means graciously protect. Indru kareya, that is when they wept, graciously protect. Karane kan setu, that literally means attaching the eye of grace. Aral Sejanan Shivan Upadesham Idu. That means Shiva graciously gave this Upadesha. So the whole meaning is, when they wept, graciously protect, attaching the eye of grace, Shiva graciously gave this Upadesha. That's the literal meaning. If we expand it slightly, the implied meaning is, when they wept repentantly, graciously protect or save us, fixing his eye of grace upon them, Shiva graciously gave this Upadesha. Upadesha means spiritual teaching. And then in the next verse, the 5th verse of the upōdghātam, Ukondorha Upadesha Sarate Ukonderum Sukum Undīpaṛa Utumbu Orindidum Undīpaṛa. That means Ulkondu Oruha Upadesha Sarate. That means when one imbibes and follows Upadesha Saram, Ulkondu Erum Sukum, happiness will rise from within. Ultumbum Orindidum, the miseries within will cease. So the whole meaning is, when one imbibes and follows Upadesha Saram, happiness will rise from within, the miseries within will cease. And if we slightly expand it, when one imbibes and follows this Upadesha Saram means the essence or summary of this of spiritual teachings. It implies in this context the essence or summary of the spiritual teaching given by Lord Shiva. Happiness will rise from within, and thereby the miseries within will cease or die or be destroyed. In Tamil, this work is called Upadēśa Undiyār because of the meter in which it's composed. But Undiyār actually has no special meaning except for the style of poetry. It refers to the style of poetry. Bhagavan also translated Upadēśa Undiyār into Telugu, Sanskrit, and Malayalam. And in those languages, he called it Upadēśa Saram. But this term Upadēśa Saram had already been coined here by Muruganar when he referred to Upadēśa Undiyār as the essence of Upadesha. But it's not the essence. People generally take this to mean the essence of Bhagavan's Upadesha. But we have to understand the context in which Bhagavan wrote this. Bhagavan didn't write this as the essence of his own Upadesha, but as the essence of the teachings given, of Upadesha given by Shiva to those Dharaka Varna rishis. That's why Bhagavan refers to other paths, other than the path of self-investigation, which is his main teaching. He refers to other paths in this, in Upadēśa Saram, because of the context in which he wrote it. So this is, though this work is called Upadēśa Saram, it's the Saram, it's the essence of the teachings that were given by Lord Shiva. And then in the final verse of the upōdghātam, Muruganar sings, Sara Upadēśa Saram Ulsarave, Sera Kali Sera Undīpaṛa, Dira Tua Dira Undīpaṛa. That means Sara Upadēśa Saram Ulsarave. If we rearrange that into prose order, that's Upadēśa Saram Sara Ulsarave. That means, may the essence of Upadēśa Sara enter within. Sera Kali Sera. That means, if you put it in prose order, Kali Sera Sera. May joy accumulate. Tua Tira Tua Tira. Again, in prose order, it would be Tua Tira Tira. May suffering cease. So if we expand it slightly, may the Sara, the essence or substance or import of Upadēśa Saram, enter within our heart. May joy accumulate or be achieved abundantly. That is, repeating the verb twice is a way of emphasizing it. So Sera Sera means may it accumulate, implies may it accumulate abundantly or may it be achieved abundantly. Kali tira tira, again, the repetition of the verb is putting emphasis on it. So may suffering cease implies may suffering cease entirely. So these are the this is the upōdghātam. As I say, these are verses that Bhagavan selected from the Murugan's Tiruvundiya to summarize the context in which he wrote this Upadēśa Undiyār. So now we come to the main text. As I said earlier, in this first verse, Bhagavan, the principal aim of this first verse is to repudiate what is one of the central doctrines of the Purvamimamsa philosophy, the idea that there's no God except karma, but karma itself is supreme. So what Bhagavan says in this verse, kaṇmam payaṉṭṛaral karttaṉa dāṇaiyāl, kaṇmam kaḍavuḻō lundīpaṛa, kaṇmam jaḍamadā vundīpaṛa. If we split that into words, it's kaṇmam payaṉṭṛaral karttaṉadu āṇaiyāl, kaṇmam kaḍavuḻō, kaṇmam jaḍamadā. It looks like three sentences, but it's actually two sentences, because the kaṇmam kaḍavuḻō is a question. Kaṇmam jaḍamadā, though it looks like a separate sentence, it's actually a clause, a subsidiary clause to the question. So if we rearrange the verse in prose order, it's kaṇmam payaṉṭṛaral karttaṉadu āṇaiyāl, kaṇmam jaḍamadā, kaṇmam kaḍavuḻō. What that means is, kaṇmam payaṉṭṛaral karttaṉa dāṇaiyāl means action giving fruit is by the ordainment of God. And kaṇmam jaḍamadā, kaṇmam kaḍavuḻō means since action is jada, non-aware, can action be God, or is action God? If we, the word he uses here for action is karma. Karma means the actions that are done, the actions that we do by mind, speech, and body. So these actions, if our actions, the actions of our mind, speech, and body are driven by our will, they will bear fruit. But what fruit they bear and when and how they bear it karma doesn't give fruit automatically. It gives fruit as per the ordinance of God, or ordainment of God. That is, God, the word Bhagavan uses here for God is karta. Karta literally means the doer, and in this context it means the ordainer, one who ordains the fruit of action. So since karma is jada, it's devoid of awareness, it has no power it's got no power to determine what fruit it will give. So what fruit each karma will give, and when and how it will give it, is all determined only by God. Here Bhagavan is indirectly, Bhagavan is saying a lot more here than it appears on the surface. The principal aim of the Purvamimamsa, why they give so much importance to ritualistic actions, because they believe that ritualistic actions are the means to gain power and thereby fulfill one's desires. So it's all the Vedic rituals, they're all about, that principally they're about the acquisition of power. And what you use the power for is up to you, but they are supposed to give power. So that is why those Dvarakavana rishis, what they were after was power. And they because they were of a very low state of mind. They were seeking power it was boosting their pride, for aggrandizement of the ego, and for fulfillment of their desires. And they were so proud of the power of their karmas that they thought there's no God other than their karmas. The karmas themselves are supreme. Even God has to, even if there's a God, he's bound by to act according to give the fruit of karmas. That was their belief. So Bhagavan this is the idea that Bhagavan is repudiating here. And what Bhagavan, the principle that Bhagavan indirectly refers to here, without explicitly stating it, is why he says karma cannot be God, because it's jada. Jada means devoid of awareness. So Bhagavan is drawing a connection here between awareness and power. The idea behind this is anything that is jada, or not aware, is not real, but just an appearance. That's one of the basic principles of Bhagavan's teaching. Whatever has no awareness of its own is just an appearance, and it appears only in the view of ego. So anything that is jada is not real, but just an appearance. So such things have no power of their own, but derive their power from ego, in whose view alone they seem to exist. That is, whatever power we see external to ourselves, whether in our own mind or in the external world, that power is derived only from, when it exists only in our view, it's derived only from us. So the power of all jada things is derived from ego, in whose view alone they seem to exist. But even ego is an unreal appearance. So since it's an unreal appearance, it's got no awareness or power of its own, but derives its awareness and power from pure awareness. That's from our real nature, which alone is real. Therefore, since actions are done by ego, they derive their power from ego, which in turn derives its power from pure awareness. Though pure awareness is the reality of ego, as ego we are aware of ourselves as a person. So what we really are, the pure awareness, seems to be something other than ourselves, and hence it's described as God. That is, because we've limited ourselves, our own real nature we see as God, as something other than ourselves, something all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving. Therefore, since God is the reality of ego, and since karmas are mere products of ego, unreal products of ego, if ego believes that there is no God other than karma, as claimed by Purva Mimamsa, that is the height of arrogance and foolishness. So Bhagavan repudiates this false belief by asking, since karma is jada, can karma be God, or is karma God? So that's the central idea here. Bhagavan is repudiating the idea that there's no God except karma, and he's showing the karma doesn't give fruit except by the ordainment of God. That is, it's only the fruit that each karma gives is the appropriate fruit selected by God and given to us to experience at an appropriate time. And once we've done an action, it's out of our hands. It's then up to God to decide when we will experience the consequences of that action, when, how, where, and what consequence we will experience. That's all in the hands of God. So Bhagavan is showing here that karma is powerless by itself. It has no power except for the power it derives from the doer of the action, which is ego, which derives its power from God, who is our real nature, pure awareness. That's verse 1. In verse 2, Bhagavan says, Vinayin vilayvutru vittai, vinay kaḍavuḻō undīpaṛa, vidu tarile undīpaṛa. so here Bhagavan goes on to say more about the nature of karma, of action. If we split the verse up into words, it consists of 2 sentences. Dinayin vilevu utru vittai, dine kadal virtidam. Dinayin vilevutru means the fruit of action having perished. What that means, what that implies is, when we our destiny, what we are experiencing in each life, is the fruit of actions that we've done in previous lives. So when we experience the fruit of an action, that fruit is thereby exhausted, it's thereby finished. So that's what Bhagavan means by the fruit of action having perished. Then he says, Vittai vine kadal virtidam. As seed, it causes to fall in the ocean of action. And then in the next sentence, he says, Vidu taral ile, which means it is not giving liberation. So if we slightly expand it to bring out the meaning more clearly, the fruit of action having perished by being experienced, remaining as a seed here means a karma vasana, or the propensity to do the same kind of action. It causes one to fall in the ocean of action. Therefore that is karma, does not give liberation. That is, the nature of action is, though an action is, Bhagavan uses here, he's talking about fruit and seed. So if we take an example, say an apple, we can eat an apple, but though we eat the whole apple, the seeds remain. And when we've eaten the apple, there's no longer any apple there, but the seeds remain. And the seeds can give rise to more, they can sprout as apple trees, which produce more apples. So in that way, same with any fruit. The fruit consists of the edible part and the seed. The edible part of the fruit of action is what we experience in each lifetime as our prarabdha. And the yet to be experienced action, fruit, are what is stored in what is called the sanchita. Sanchita means the heap or pile of the fruit of past actions which are yet to be experienced. And it's from that sanchita, from the pile of past karmas, of the fruits of past karmas, but in each lifetime, God selects a certain small portion to be experienced as our destiny or prarabdha in this lifetime. So when we experience the fruit of an action, that fruit is finished, but the seed remains. And that is, the seed is the vasana, or the inclination or propensity to do the same kind of actions again and again. Because of these seeds, because of vasanas, we can never exhaust all karmas, because the very nature of karmas, even though we consume the fruit of one action, its seed still remains, and we're liable to do the same action again and again and again. So because of the vasanas that are left by actions, the action is self-perpetuating. It never comes to an end. That's why Bhagavan says it causes one to fall in the ocean of action. Therefore, he concludes, the word therefore isn't there, but it's implied, therefore, it does not give liberation. Vidu taral. In the Sanskrit version of this verse, Bhagavan says, Kriti mahodado patanakaranam. That is, the subject implied is action or karma. Karma is the cause of falling into a great ocean of action. Phalama sasvatam. Its fruit is impermanent. But in Sanskrit, Bhagavan doesn't bring out the important word in Tamil, which is vittai, because in Sanskrit he wrote it in a short meter. There wasn't room for him to bring out everything. But then he says in the last sentence, gati nirodhakam. Whereas in Tamil, he says, it does not give liberation, vidu taral. In Sanskrit, he says even more emphatically, gati nirodhakam. It obstructs liberation. It's liberation obstructing. That's the nature of action. Not only does it not give liberation, it actually obstructs liberation. So long as we continue to engage in action, it's endless. The actions are self-perpetuating. Then what is the way out of this? The question naturally arises. Ultimately, as Bhagavan often used to say, liberation is not attained by doing anything, but just by being. So ultimately, the only way to attain liberation is to give up all doing and just to be. Which we in order to give up all doing and just be, we need to cease rising as ego. And in order to cease rising as ego, we need to investigate ourselves. We need to turn our attention back within. That's what Bhagavan he explains in later verses. The only summa iruptu, just being, that is the key to liberation. But in order to just be, we need to turn our attention within, because so long as we are attending to anything other than ourselves, we are thereby rising as ego and engaging in action. So if we want to refrain from all action just to be, we need to turn our attention back within. But Bhagavan takes us, because of the level of spiritual maturity of those Dharmakavana rishis who just now given up their pride in karma, he had to take a gentle approach. That's why he deals with other parts in the earlier part of Upadēśa, in the first half of Upadēśa Undiyār. So he begins to introduce, in verse 3, he begins to introduce the path of the karma marga and bhakti marga. That is the path of action and the path of devotion. According to Bhagavan, as is clear from this work, he doesn't take the karma marga or karma yoga, as it's sometimes called, to be a separate path, but to be just as a preliminary stage of the path of devotion. And when we begin to follow the path of devotion, we begin by expressing our devotion in terms of action, of mind, speech, and body. So those actions of mind, speech, and body are what Bhagavan takes as karma yoga. But to introduce it, what he says in verse 3, that is, if karma, if doing karma only throws us in the ocean of action, how can we ever get out of this ocean of action? Well, the answer he gives him in this verse, what he says is, karttaṇa kākam nishkarmiya karmam, karte tiriti aktundīpaṛa, gati vari kāmbikum undīpaṛa. If we split it into words, it is karttaṇaku ākum nishkarmiya karmam, karte tiriti aktu gati vari kāmbikum. What that means is, desireless action done for God, the literal meaning is, desireless action done for God, purifying the mind, it will show the path to liberation. The term he uses here for desireless action, in Tamil it's nitkamya karmam, but that's a Tamil form of the Sanskrit term nishkarmiya karma. Kamya means what is done with desire. Nishkamya is what is done without desire. So action done without desire is literally what it means, nishkarmiya karma. That is action which is not motivated by selfish desire, or which is not seeking the fruit of the action. So you're not doing the action to gain anything. But why would you do an action if it's not driven by desire? Obviously, we're not going to do action for no reason at all. So he says, karttaṇaku ākum. That means done for God. that implies done with love for God. The love of God, if you do, whatever actions you do just for the love of God, in the spirit of offering the fruit to God. In Sanskrit, he says, Ishvara pitum, that is, offering to God, offering the fruit to God. In Tamil, he simply says, done for God. In the Malayalam version, I don't know if I've got that. In the Malayalam version, he says, Ishvara pritiyenai. Ishvara pritiyenai means done, it literally means it for the love of God. So that's what's implied here in Tamil. When he says done for God, it implies done with love for God, or done for the love of God. So if you do action not for the fulfillment of any, not for fulfillment of any desires, but just for the love of God, that will purify the mind, and thereby it will show the path to liberation. Show the path to liberation means it will enable one to recognize what the correct path to liberation is. That is, so long as our mind is impure, we will not have the clarity of discernment to recognize what is the correct path to liberation. That's why it begins with the spiritual path begins with either with this nishkarmiya karma or with some of the various yoga practices. That's how the spiritual path begins. When he says it purifies the mind, what are the impurities in the mind? Impurities in the mind are nothing but our likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, hopes, fears, all those elements of our will that draw our mind outwards, they draw our mind away from ourselves towards other things. Those are impurities. So purifying the mind means removing or weakening those likes, dislikes, desires, and attachments. So how does nishkarmiya karma purify the mind? It's not the action itself that purifies the mind. It's the love with which we do it. Because we're doing it with love for God, that love for God, the more we love God, we're diverting our will away from other things towards God. So the stronger our love for God, the weaker our desire for other things will become. So by doing nishkarmiya karma for the love of God, or with love for God, one is slowly weakening the desires and attachments. That doesn't mean all worship of God is not what Bhagavan calls here nishkarmiya karma, because most people who worship God, who go to temples or churches or mosques or viharas or synagogues or whatever place of worship they go to, or who inwardly pray to God or do whatever they do, they're doing it for the fulfillment of their desires. So their actions are not nishkarmiya karma, they're karmiya karma. If we worship God or pray to God for something that we can get from God, our love is not true love for God. Our love is love for what we think we can get from God. So that is not what Bhagavan is talking about here. Only when we give up seeking anything from God, when we love God for his own sake, when we want nothing but God himself, then only we really begin the bhakti marga, the path of devotion. So here Bhagavan is referring to actions that are done for the love of God. Those actions, not the actions themselves will not purify the mind, but that love with which they are done will purify the mind. So it's the love for God which will purify the mind, not the actions themselves. The actions may be an expression of our love, a channel through which we express our love. But it's not the actions themselves that will purify our mind, it's the love with which we do them. So in the next, in verses 4 to 7, Bhagavan describes what are the different types of nishkarmiya karma we can do for the love of God. but I'll keep those for next month. So I've talked a rather long time today. I've talked for about an hour because there was a lot to cover. But if anyone would now like to ask any questions.
Thank you, Michael. That was really nice. I took some notes as you were discussing. Just had a few questions. Let me start with verse 1, which is karma giving fruit is by the ordainment of God. And since karma is insentient, can karma be God? So because he says here, karma giving fruit is by the ordainment of God. So basically, God decides what, where, when, and how each karma is going to bear fruit in this birth. So I was trying to think here, how does it help us knowing this fact? Does it give us a confidence, or is it the opposite? And if so, could you explain how does it really impact us? This particular statement.
Okay, this particular statement, it is this particular statement has to be understood in the context of the karma theory as taught by Bhagavan. The karma theory is not the central part of Bhagavan's teaching, because Bhagavan is not so much interested in action, as in he's not interested in what we do, but in what we are. We need to discover what we actually are. So action, in a way, is of peripheral interest. But why Bhagavan taught us a karma theory, he taught, everything Bhagavan taught us has a practical aim, a practical purpose. So if we understand the karma theory as taught by Bhagavan, it's a great aid in the path of self-investigation, but particularly in the path of surrender. Because I'll just outline the karma theory as Bhagavan gives it, then you'll be able to understand it in context. That is, what Bhagavan taught us is, whatever actions we do, whatever actions by mind, speech, or body we do, but are driven by our desires, they will bear fruit. But those fruit, those actions don't bear fruit automatically. That is, the fruit, and they don't bear fruit immediately. Whatever actions we do in this lifetime cannot give fruit in this lifetime. But those fruit will get added to the sanchita. In each lifetime, we're able to experience only a certain amount of prarabdha. That is, we may be alive for 60, 70, 80, even 100 years. We're going to experience 100 years worth of prarabdha at most. But though we can only experience, what we can experience in each lifetime is limited. But what we can want to experience is unlimited. There's so many things we want, more than what we can experience. So in each lifetime, because of the strength of our desires and attachments and likes and dislikes, we're accumulating more fruit when we're exhausting. So the sanchita is always getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So for each life, Bhagavan selects certain fruit to be experienced. Those fruit that he selects to be experienced, he's got a vast choice, because he's got a huge store of sanchita. So he will select those fruit that will be most beneficial for our spiritual development. So whatever we experience in this lifetime, it's all prarabdha. But what is prarabdha? In effect, prarabdha is the will of God, the will of Bhagavan. That is, he has selected these fruit, knowing that these fruit will be what is most beneficial for us. So if we understand this, two things. Firstly, we cannot change our prarabdha at all, because whatever effort we make in this lifetime, whether to experience things that are not destined or to avoid experiencing what is destined, cannot bear fruit in this lifetime. it will only just get added to sanchita for possible future experience. So we cannot change our prarabdha at all. Secondly, whatever is ordained in our prarabdha is what is good for, is what is for our spiritual benefit. That is, God or Bhagavan selects only those fruit which will be most conducive to our spiritual development. So whatever happens, our prarabdha, though it's the fruit of our past actions, that's one way of viewing it, but it's equally true to say, but it's the will of God. It's both are true, because it is God's will, but we should experience these particular fruit in this lifetime. Whatever we experience is the fruit of actions we've done in the past, but which actions we experience now is the actions that are selected by Bhagavan for us to experience at this moment. When we understand that, firstly, knowing that we cannot change anything, as Bhagavan said in his note to his mother, that which is not endram nadavadadu, envichikanum nadavadu. What is not that, what is never to happen, will not happen, however much effort one makes. Nadapadu, entadaseyanum niladu. What is to happen will not stop, whatever obstruction one tries to make. So we cannot actually change anything. So what is the conclusion Bhagavan says? Bhagavan says, iduve tinnam, this is certain. Ahalin monumayirake nandru. Therefore, being silent is best. In other words, we shouldn't try to change. We should just accept whatever comes according to destiny. We shouldn't try to add to it or subtract from it, or we should just accept it as it is. This doesn't mean we shouldn't do any action, because in order for us to experience our prarabdha, certain actions of our body, speech, and mind have to be done. Those actions will be made to do. Those actions will be driven by our prarabdha. That's what Bhagavan says in the first note, in the first sentence of that note to his mother. Avarava prarabdha prakaram adakanavan angangindu atuvipan. That means avarava prarabdha prakaram. According to the prarabdha of each person, adakanavan, he who is for that means God, Angangirandu, being there, that's being in each place, being in the heart of each individual, atuvipan, will make them dance. So our body, speech, and mind will be made to do those actions which are necessary for us to experience prarabdha. That doesn't mean all actions were done by our body, speech, mind are necessary to experience prarabdha, because our will is also interfering there and also driving us to do this or that. The only thing is, whatever actions we do by our will are not going to change anything, because what is the prarabdha cannot be changed, because it's already been ordained by God for our own good. So if we understand this, whatever difficulties or hardships or whatever comes in our life, we will accept it as the sweet will of God. So this is the particular answer to your question. If we understand that the fruits of actions are according to the ordainment of God, are given by God, we will accept whatever happens as the sweet will of God. We may not understand why I should be suffering in this way. We won't even ask why I should be suffering in this way, because we know, we've got that firm conviction, but everything that happens is happening by the will of God for our own good. We won't need to question. We won't need an explanation for everything. That explanation is all for our own good. It's all given by God out of his abundant grace, his abundant love for us. If we understand that, it will make life so much easier for us. We'll be able to accept both the good and the bad things of life so much more easily. We will happily accept whatever happens, because we know
you'll be more at peace.
And it's for our good. We'll be at peace. We'll be at peace. That is what Bhagavan talks about when he says, when we know God is driving all karyas. This is what he says in the 13th paragraph of Nana. When we know God is driving all karyas, why should we, instead of submitting ourselves to him, the word he uses for God is Parameshwara Shakti, the supreme ruling power. Instead of yielding ourselves to it, Why should we be thinking, Upadēśa Undiyār, Upadēśa Undiyār? It's necessary to do this, it's necessary to do this, to do that. Or it's necessary to do in this way, it's necessary to do in that way. Then he gives the analogy of a passenger traveling on the train. When we're traveling on a train, the train is carrying not only us, it's carrying all our luggage also. So why should we suffer carrying our luggage on our head? If we put our luggage aside, the luggage will be carried by the train just as well as if we're carrying it on our head. We can travel comfortably. So Bhagavan, if there's one duty Bhagavan has given us, it is to be happy. That's all Bhagavan has asked us to be. What we all want is to be happy. And all Bhagavan asks us to do, be happy. But he says, if you want to be happy, you need to surrender. You need to take the burden off your head. Travel comfortably. Have no likes or dislikes. Don't even rise to think it's necessary to do this or it's necessary to do that. He defines in the first sentence of that paragraph what is true surrender to God. Anmanishne tavira, Anma chintane tavira, vera chintane kalambavadaku, satram idum kodamo. That means not giving even the slightest room to rising any thought other than thought of oneself. Thought of oneself means, Atmachintana means self-attentiveness. Atmanishya paranai irupte, thereby being firmly established in oneself, that alone is giving oneself to God. So not thinking anything, not except that is turning our entire attention back to ourselves without giving the least attention to any other thought. In other words, giving no room to the rising of any other thought, because thoughts can rise only if we attend to them. If we attend only to ourselves, there'll be no one to attend to the thoughts, and they can't rise by themselves, because they rise only in our awareness. If we're not attending to them, they cannot rise. So that's what Bhagavan means, giving no room to rising any thought other than Atmachintana, other than self-attentiveness. That is giving oneself to God. So that's the way to be happy. If we want to be truly happy, we should stop thinking of anything else. We should attend only to ourselves. Because what is happiness? Happiness is our own real nature. So if we want to find happiness, we have to turn within. The more we attend to ourselves, the more ego subsides. And more ego subsides, the happier and more peaceful we will be, more satisfied we will be. So this saying that action gives fruit only according to the will of God is not a complete teaching in itself, but it's a very key part of what the karma theory Bhagavan taught us. And it's not even karma theory, the law of karma that Bhagavan taught us. And why he taught us this law of karma as he taught us? Because it takes such a great burden off our mind. It makes surrenders. If we understand this, if we are firmly convinced of this, surrender will be so much easier and our life will be so much more pleasant. So, as I said, whatever Bhagavan talks about karma, it's not central to his teaching, but it's a very important auxiliary element of his teaching, we can say, because it helps us on this path of surrender.
Right.
And
one of the devotees.
Sorry, by helping us on the path of surrender, it is thereby helping us on the path of self-investigation. Because what is the obstacle to self-investigation? When we try to turn our attention within, why our attention keeps on jumping out? Because we're not willing to surrender ourselves. If we're willing to surrender ourselves, then it'll be very easy to turn our attention within. But what makes self-investigation is difficult is our reluctance to surrender ourselves. Because we cannot investigate ourselves without thereby surrendering ourselves. So if we're not willing to surrender ourselves, we will not be willing to turn within. So all what Bhagavan taught us, it's all of practical importance. It's all to help us to turn within and thereby surrender ourselves.
Right. So another devotee is asking, because of what you just mentioned, does that absolve me from personal responsibility?
No, it puts the full personal...
Does it absolve any person?
No, it doesn't. It puts the full responsibility on us. But our responsibility is to surrender ourselves, not to try to do this or to try to do that. Even though everything that is happening is according to prarabdha, that doesn't mean we can't do any wrong. Any action that is driven by our will is wrong. Because any action that is driven by our will, that our will is our outward going attention, our will is what drives our attention outwards. That is the wrong. According to Bhagavan, the only sin is rising as ego. How we rise as ego? By turning our attention outwards to see all these things. So letting our attention go away from ourselves, that is the cardinal sin. That is the sin that is the root of all other sins. So yes, we've got full responsibility. Our responsibility is to surrender ourselves. And if we do actions, what are the actions that bear fruit, that give fruit? Obviously, if we're doing actions only according to our destiny, they're not going to bear fruit, because the actions we do according to that destiny are the fruit of our past actions. So the actions that bear fruit are the actions we do by our will. That is the agamya. The agamya, by our agamya, we cannot change anything, but we do accumulate fruit, and we do strengthen our karma vasanas. So the agamya has consequences, but not the consequences we want. We want or if I work hard, I'll become rich, and then I'll be able to do this, and I'll be able to do that, I'll be able to fulfill all my desires. We may be thinking like that and trying to accumulate money, but what we're accumulating actually is only, first we're accumulating the fruits of our actions, and we're accumulating the seeds of those fruits that make us do the same action again and again and again. So the full responsibility is on us.
Right.
That's
an important point.
Do we want to surrender ourselves, or do we want to engage in action and accumulate more fruit and drown further and further in this great ocean of action? Kriti Mahodado Patanakaranam, as he says in Sanskrit. It causes us to fall in this great ocean of action. So it's our responsibility. Do we want to fall in this ocean of action, or do we want to reach for shore by surrendering ourselves to him? The choice is ours. The responsibility is ours.
Right. So in the second verse, which is the fruit of action, having perished, will as seeds make one fall into the ocean of action, and will not give liberation. Just had a few comments from the other language versions. In Malayalam, he says, "Kuda kude karma samudratil sadikam," which just means like again and again. He pushes it into us, so he's just stressing it there.
Yes.
And
the Malayalam version is very nice, because Bhagavan wrote that in a longer meter. There are many things he stresses in the Malayalam version.
So that was really, so basically he's saying, like, the more and more you get into action, it's
the more and more
very
you
difficult.
drown in the action.
The more and more you drown. It's just like
Yeah.
the kuda. It's like again and again. You're just
Yeah.
getting into that, and in this context here, and also there's another phrase he used in the Malayalam version, "Ennume kanikilla." So it's like it will not ever show the path to liberation.
Yes.
So so in that context, so could you please explain the word action or karma? Is he referring to all types of action, or is he just referring to kamya karmas alone?
Well,
in this verse?
Firstly, it's not referring to the actions we do according to prarabdha, because they've been ordained. It's referring to the agamya, the action we do by our own will. What Bhagavan says in verse 2 is a general principle. Actions will, though you experience the fruit, they leave seeds and thereby they put you in the ocean of action. Therefore, it doesn't give liberation. What he says in verse 3 is an exception. If you do the action, if your actions are not motivated by desire, if you do them purely for the love of God, then they will purify the mind. But as I said, it's not the actions that purify the mind. It's the love of God, the love with which we do them that purifies the mind. Though this idea of nishkarmiya karma, this is there in many of the old texts, but part of the karma marga, the part of karma yoga, as it's sometimes called, the part of nishkarmiya karma. Bhagavan has said, only a jnani can be a true karma yogi. That is, only the jnani can act without desire, is what it implies. That is, so long as we rise as ego, we will to a greater or lesser extent have desire. And so long as we have desire, our actions will to the extent that we have desire, to that extent, we will do actions driven by desire. So we cannot be, whatever nishkarmiya karma we do as a jiva, as an ego, is not perfect. It's not perfect nishkarmiya karma. But the key is the love of God. The more we love God, the less we will be interested in the fruits of our actions. So if we truly surrender ourselves to God, whatever actions are done by mind, speech, or body, they will be nishkarmiya because they're going on according to prarabdha. So if we rise as ego, our will begin to interfere. To the extent ego subsides, to that extent, when ego subsides, it will subside, and thereby agamya karmas will subside. So we don't actually, that's why Bhagavan never encouraged us to be concerned with action. That's why he says, why should we be thinking, it's necessary to do this, it's necessary to do that. It's not necessary to do anything, just sumayeru, keep quiet. Being silent is good. That's Bhagavan's teaching. So we don't actually have to do any action because we don't have to rise as ego. If we rise as ego, then inevitably we engage in action. We cannot avoid it completely. But the more we surrender ourselves, the more ego subsides, the less we will be engaging in action driven by desire. So what Bhagavan says in verse 2, coming back to the question, that is the general principle. Action is self-perpetuating. We can never get to the end of action by action. What he says in verse 3, though he seems to be talking about action, nishkarmiya karma, the key to it is the karttaṇa, done for God. That implies done for the love of God. Ishwara Prithyanai, as he says in Malayalam, done for the love of God. What is done for the love of God, it's the love of God which is the key to getting out of this endless cycle of karma. What drives karma is desire. Desire is that when desire is seeking happiness outside ourselves, whereas when we seek happiness in God, what is God? Though at first in the initial stages of the bhakti marga, people think of God as something other than themselves, what God actually is our own real nature. And as we follow the path of bhakti, of doing the nishkarmiya, puja, japa, and dhyana, as he explains in the next few verses, that purifies the mind. The more the mind becomes pure, the closer we come to recognizing what is that's what he said, gati parikamikam, it shows the way to liberation. By purifying our mind, it clarifies our mind. And only the clear mind will recognize the way to liberation is not turning outwards to do anything, but turning back within. So the Bhakti Marga, as we progress along the Bhakti Marga, the feeling of distinction from God dissolves, and eventually we'll be ready to accept that God is nothing but our own real nature. We cannot be anything other than God. If God is the infinite whole, how can we be anything other than God? If we are something other than God, then God is thereby limited. Everything is God except me. I'm separate. Then God is thereby limited God. So we cannot be anything other than God. So since we are nothing other than God, we should give ourselves back to God. We should surrender ourselves completely. That's where the Bhakti Marga is leading. Bhakti Marga from the beginning is, the whole of Bhakti Marga is surrender. But the initial stages, we're surrendering our desires and attachments. So we still do action, but we do it for the love of God, not for desire. So we are slowly beginning to surrender our desires. We're beginning to surrender our will to the will of God. But we cannot surrender our will entirely so long as we remain separate. So long as we rise as ego, we will have a will of our own. We will have likes and dislikes. So we may be able to reduce the strength of our likes and dislikes to a great extent, but we cannot completely give up likes and dislikes, desires and attachments, so long as we experience ourselves as a separate entity, as ego. So surrender can be complete. We cannot even surrender our will completely without surrendering ourselves completely. So surrender is complete only by surrendering ourselves. And in order to surrender ourselves, how can we surrender ourselves? As Bhagavan says in the first sentence of the 13th paragraph, Anma chintane kavira vera chintane kalambavadaku. Satram idam kaṇmam, not giving even the slightest room to rising of any thought other than thought of oneself. That is giving oneself to God.
So one of the devotees makes a comment. So that means the only requirement is contemplation of God all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as you'll see when later on, Bhagavan talks about in verses 4 to 7, he talks about the various different practices of bhakti. But in verse 8, he comes to what he says is the best practice of all. That is, he says, Anya bhabatin avanahamahum ananya bhavamayundīpaṛa anatinam uttamam undīpaṛa. Anya bhava means contemplating of God as something other than oneself. So long as we take God to be other than ourselves, our contemplation will be on that other thing. But better than that, Bhagavan says, avanahamahum ananya bhavam. That is the ananya bhava. Ananya bhava means contemplation on him as not other than oneself. Avanahamahum means in which he is I. That means with the conviction that God is what is shining in us as I, meditating on ourself alone, meditating on what is not other. What does that mean? It means meditating on ourself. So the best contemplation on God is to contemplate on ourselves, because God is ourself. God is what we actually are. God is our real nature. So yes, our sole aim should be to contemplate on God. But let us contemplate on God as he actually is, rather than as we imagine him to be. We imagine him to be something other than ourselves. But what he actually is that which is shining in us as I.
So contemplation of God as none other than you.
Yeah, exactly.
Ananya bhava. So now, with regards to verse 3, where he says, desireless action dedicated to God will purify the mind, and it will show the path to liberation. I was one time when I was reading it first, because I was wondering, what does desireless action mean? Desire. So finally, it got clear that it is there is no desire for the fruits of action. Of action itself, no desire for the fruits of action. Is that right?
Yeah. But But it's all relative. I mean, the nishkarmiya karma done by us as ego is only relatively nishkarmiya. There will be so long as there's ego, there will be likes, dislikes. If we do an action, even if we're doing it for the love of God, if that action is bears fruit, I mean, if that action is successful, supposing we're doing some action, but which we supposing we there are people who are starving or something, or people we're trying to do some good service in the world to help people. We may do it for the love of God, but still, if we're able to alleviate the suffering of others by doing those, we will derive some pleasure from that. So that shows there is still some liking, some desire is still there. So it's when it's that's why Bhagavan said only the karma yogi, only the atmajnani can be a perfect karma yogi. Whatever karma yoga we may do before jnana, we will derive satisfaction from doing good work or doing whatever it is. So we can't, so long as we're looking outwards, the ego will be rising and playing its mischief. We really want to, what God wants, if we're doing action for the love of God, if we truly love God, shouldn't we do what God wants most from us? God doesn't want us to do any action. God wants us to surrender ourselves to him not because he wants anything from us, but he wants us to be happy. And he knows the only way for us to be truly happy is to surrender ourselves. So ultimately, all these nishkarmiya karma, these are all preliminary stages. Ultimately, we've got to go beyond action, just to leave all outward things and turn within. That's why I said the Murugan in his pāyiram, he begins kaṉmaṅ, giving up the delusion of action. That is, the way to be saved is to give up the delusion of action. So the whole of Upadēśa Undiyār is showing that action is not the way. Action will not give liberation. Even the nishkarmiya karma will not give liberation. The bhakti with which it's done, the love with which it's done, will purify the mind and show the way to liberation. The way to liberation is to give up action. How do we give up action? By ceasing to attend to anything external to us. Withdrawing the mind from Āṇaiyāl and turning to Anvayam. Bhagavan in verse 8, after saying that Anvayam, the meditation on God as not above oneself, is anaityanam uttamam, the best of all. In verse 9 he says, Bhava balatinal, by the strength of that Bhava, that means that Anvayam, Bhava balatinal, bhavanatita satbhava tirutale, being in the state of satbhava, that's a state of just, the true state of just being, bhavanatita, which is beyond, which transcends all meditation, all bhavana, parabhakti tattvam. That is the principle of supreme devotion. So it's by turning our attention back within, we attain that state of satbhava. We remain in that state of satbhava. What he describes in the next verse as udita idatil odungi iratal, being, subsiding and being in the state, in the place from which we rose. So it's by turning our attention within that we give up all action and remain in the state of being. That is the key to that is the way to liberation. So long as we are doing, we cannot attain liberation. We need to stop doing and just be. How to stop doing and just be? Turn your attention within. So Bhagavan's teaching is all beautifully coherent. It all makes perfect sense. It all holds together logically and coherently.
Right.
Every element of his teachings entails all the others. So it's all so simple. If we grasp the essence of it, it's so incredibly simple.
Right.
It's not by doing that we achieve anything, by just being.
So, and that's final it's a comment or question. Is this one of the devotees asking? So, if my reality is formless, how does prarabdha affect me? So I'll repeat it. If my reality is formless, how does prarabdha affect me? So I thought, you answering this will sort of bring a good conclusion to this.
Yeah, okay. If your reality,
Yeah.
The truth is, yes, your reality is formless. And the truth is, yes, you're not affected by prarabdha at all. But though your reality is formless, now you experience yourself as a form. You experience, I am such and such a person. I am this body. I am sitting here and I am in Houston, not in London or something. We've limited ourselves in a particular time, a particular place by taking this body to be I. So we now experience ourselves as a form. Because we experience ourselves as a form, we experience prarabdha. If we turn within and see what we actually are, we will find we are a formless, infinite whole. And therefore, there never was any ego to do any karma or to experience any prarabdha. But so long as we experience anything other than ourselves, so long as we experience phenomena, we experience ourselves. I am different. This PC in front of me is different. This light here is different. This wall is different. This table is different. We experience all these differences because of form. Because we see forms because we take ourselves to be a form. In verse 4 of Upadēśa, Bhagavan says, Uruvam tāṇaiyāl. If oneself is a form, ulu paramatran, world and God will be likewise. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms and how? So it's we see all these forms because we mistake ourselves to be a form. We first grasp a form as ourself, and then we project all the other. First we project this form as ourself, and then we project all the other forms. So if we experience ourselves as formless, yes, there's no karma at all, no prarabdha, nothing. There is just ourselves. It's just formless, pure awareness, infinite happiness, Satchidananda, whatever you call it. That is all there is. That is, there's no other. Ekkameva advaityam, one only without a second. There's nothing else. So there's no prarabdha, there's nothing, no karma, nothing. But so long as we rise as ego, we experience ourselves as a form, we consequently see other forms, and we consequently engage in action and experience the fruit of our actions. So what's the way out of this? Stop rising as ego. Somayeru. Just be. Right. How to stop rising as ego? Stop turning your attention outwards, turn your attention back within. So simple, so simple.
Right.
Simple, but why we're not putting it into practice? Because we're not yet ready to surrender. So surrender is the absolute key to everything. We must be willing to surrender. That's why the willingness, that's why Bhagavan indirectly refers to love in that third verse. Karttaṇa, done for God, means done for the love of God. Why would we do something for God if we don't love him? If I don't like you, I'm not going to do anything for you. If I do something for you, it's because I like you. So it's love is the key. And love it takes for, and if true love is there, to the extent that we love someone, we are ready to give that person whatever they want. The greatest gift, if we truly love a person, if we truly love someone, if we truly love God, what's the best thing we can give to God? We give ourselves to God. So surrender is the willingness to surrender ourselves. That is the pinnacle of the path of bhakti. That is the key to turning our attention within and thereby just being. And the liberation is not attained by doing anything, but just by being.
Right.
It all ties together. It's all coherent. It all makes sense. You just need to grasp the core of it, and everything becomes clear.
Right. So So in that comment, if my reality is formless, how does prarabdha affect me? It is true, while it is true that my reality is formless, to the extent that I think that I am Kumar, prarabdha is going to affect me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Michael. And that was really nice. We will see you next month. And you said you will be discussing verses 4 through 8?
4 to 7 or 8, I'm not sure. I'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's probably best to finish with 8. Yeah, let's aim for 4 to 8 next time.
4 to 8. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you so much. Namaskara.
Verse 8 is one of my favorites. I'm not so interested in the other verses, I must say. I mean, there's a good reason why Bhagavan gave those verses. It puts everything in perspective, but they're all leading up to verse 8.